Are you a manager who is eager to change the trajectory of your career? I have spent the last 23 years as a Fortune 50 leader learning from other industry leaders how to break free from limiting beliefs and habits. On the Might in Motion podcast, we focus on the 4 M's: motivation, momentum, mindfulness, and might. We bring you leaders from Fortune companies, doctors, and entrepreneurs. Their stories of living their own might in motion will inspire you to create your own action plan and achieve your goals. Welcome to Might in Motion.
Today's episode of Might in Motion is brought to you by Pantheon FM, Fortunes Magnified. Pantheon FM is changing the world through entrepreneurship. In this community, you will find everything you need to create, amplify, and monetize your world-changing business. Join us at pantheon.community/register/LAUA.
Deb Casello is the president and founder of Keys 365. She is a master level suicide prevention trainer and has been involved in crisis and trauma support since 2008. Deb has assisted police and fire departments in both Alaska and Nevada, providing on-scene survivor support following a death in the community. Deb founded and directed the statewide suicide prevention outreach, You Are Not Alone, and brought Wyana, YANA, to communities across Alaska by working for the Alaska Department of Education through the University of Alaska. Along with a degree in communications, she was certified as a trainer in mental health first aid, QPR, and critical incident stress management and debriefing. Deb worked at Georgetown University Hospital as a surgical liaison and the Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors, serving as the manager of the National Military Survival Help Hotline Team and Development Team Manager for Community Outreach. I am really excited to have Deb here today.
Well, thank you. I'm excited to be here.
You know, we want to start off with, and this is what I really appreciate about Deb, is that when we were in the green room, she talked about, hey, there might be people listening that are in need of help right now. And so to start off, if you are in need of help right now, and you can call 988 and you can get help. So Deb, can you help educate the audience on what 988 is? Because I did not know.
Okay, so 988 is a newer national suicide prevention hotline. Functions a lot like 911, but it is geared specifically for support around suicide. And the great thing about it, and what we just want to make sure as people are listening to the podcast, although we are really focused on education and talking about how we can prevent suicide at an early stage, meaning early intervention, we want for everyone to know that if they feel like they need help or they would like to get information on how to support someone else in the moment, calling 988 is a great starting point. And anyone from anywhere, it's based on your phone number, can give a call.
That is awesome. Like I mentioned earlier, I didn't even know it existed. And that's why I really wanted to talk with you, because you have such a wealth of knowledge and history and experience. And what you're doing with Keys 365 is to help others learn how to really be able to kind of maybe identify issues potentially earlier. So, can you give us a high level of what Keys 365 does?
Sure. So Keys 365, Keys is an acronym. It means knowledge and empathy yield strength. And the reason that we went with that name is because suicide prevention, basically any class that you take that is a best practice class, is going to follow a formula of recognizing risk factors and warning signs, then connecting and asking directly about suicide and offering support resources. And what we wanted to do with Keys, because in my teaching of suicide prevention for the years I did in Alaska, we got a lot of feedback. And what we realized is that people now are ready for a little bit more in-depth information around how to support and do manage that, working through the best practice framework. So what we do is we take empathy and we take the lens of empathy and kind of infuse it into each of the steps. And so our goal is to provide in-person 60 to 90-minute suicide prevention classes for free. So there's no charge. We're a 501c3 nonprofit to any community. And that means any community is the people that you work with, that you live with, that you spend your free time with. And what you're doing is you're getting this information together so that it can lead to additional conversations and a change in culture around mental health. And when we talk about early intervention, there's, very generally two swaths of suicide prevention. And one is crisis intervention. And I've had a lot of training in that. But that is when somebody is actively thinking about suicide. It is a much more critical point in somebody, in what's happening with somebody. The other part of suicide prevention is early intervention. And what we're really focused on is, in our culture, we are taught, hey, if somebody seems off, if they're going through a tough time, if you've heard things that they might be going through, or things that they've said, or you've observed some things, our culture tells us it is not polite to ask that person what's going on. You're supposed to just pretend everything's fine and just carry on and keep working. And where we feel empowered is when somebody is in a full-blown crisis. It's like, okay, now I can step in because clearly they are in trouble and need help. And what we're trying to do is have communities have the culture and the connection where if someone is struggling, people feel comfortable stepping forward early on and saying, I care about you, let's get help. And I liken it to the idea that if you saw somebody who was limping and decided, I'm not going to get involved, and then all of a sudden their leg's broken and the bone's sticking out and blood's everywhere, then you're like, oh my gosh, I got to get involved and help this person. And what we want to do is say, hey, you're limping. Before it gets to that point, let's get you some support and make that be the place where we engage and connect.
I love that. It's similar to, I've led teams for, probably more than 20 years now, right? And sometimes you see somebody on your team that's having a performance problem.
Mm-hmm.
And if you wait till the annual review, right, to address the problem,
Right.
at that point, you're probably already down the path of maybe getting rid of somebody.
Right.
Versus having some of those uncomfortable conversations throughout the process. And so I love how you talk about creating a community so people feel comfortable to help others get help, or to say, hey, there seems to be something going on. Because I think that's applicable across the board.
Or they themselves to step forward and ask about help. And I love that you brought up the idea of, not waiting for that annual review. And one of the things is when we work with leaders, whether they're military folks, whether it's a corporate structure, we have taught classes. We're approved through the Virginia State Bar to teach continuing legal education for attorneys. What I try to make sure that leaders understand is that there are rules and protocols within your organization. And if you notice that someone's performance needs correction, do your job.
Mm-hmm.
Suicide prevention does not mean not doing your job. So what we try to talk about is follow your protocols, do your job. If what is necessary is writing up a report that is going to somehow reflect, whatever is going on with this person, do that. But if you want to connect with somebody on a level where you are checking in with them on a human to human level, what is most impactful is to make that a separate conversation. Because if you sit down with someone and say, hey, I've noticed that, this last month you've been late several times. your work seems to be disorganized. You're not collaborating well with our team anymore. I'm going to have to write up, this report and have you sign off for it. And I also want to check in with you as a friend and see how you're doing. That person is going to have such a hard time hearing that you care about them. And so what we encourage people to do, especially leaders, is have, those conversations that are necessary to have, but then in a separate conversation at, close, full stop, the one open new conversation at another time, and just say, hey, could we go get a cup of coffee? Maybe even get out of the workplace, not meeting, sitting in your office. The other thing is that leaders have different relationships with the people that they manage. And sometimes, depending on the organization, it can feel very much almost level, where it's not so much a manager and, someone that they're managing, or a team person. It can really feel like there's a leader, but everybody's almost equal within that team. And it's more like a supervisory position. And in that case, or in any case, it may be that you're the right person to have that conversation. But also, before you have it, think, am I the best person to make the most meaningful impact with this other person? Because what you're really doing is you're trying to offer support. You don't have to be the one that has it. We always want to be putting attention to, we don't want to be walking around, gossiping about people and spreading rumors. But maybe there's an HR person. Maybe this person is not, maybe you're not their direct report. Maybe you are their direct report, but there may be somebody else in the organization who is more appropriate to make a better impact. And so I always encourage people, what we're trying to do is be mindful and thoughtful in our connections. And so as we're noticing those things, it's good to take a moment and just really think about what would be the most helpful for that person. And one of the stories that I loved, we had an attorney who was a co-presenter with me, and he has got, I think, like 20 attorneys that work for him in the law firm that he owns. And he said that there was no coming back from it. He had to let this person go. And they sat down, they had the wrap-up meeting, and he let him know, what was going on and all the different business end of things. And then he said to him at the end of the meeting, before you go, I know you got to do some stuff and probably make some calls, but before you leave, I'd like to just go get a cup of coffee together. And they left the building, they went to a coffee shop, and he said, I know, and you know that you cannot work for me anymore. However, I still care about you. And there's some resources I want you to have. And he gave him some resources. He had them all printed out. He just said, I'm just handing these to you. And he said, I want you to know that you can always call me, and I will see how I could be of support to you should you need my help. And it wasn't that he said, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to take on your problem. I'm going to take you back and have you work here. But it was such a supportive and caring thing to do that I think that no matter what the outcome is, there is the job and professional end, and then there's the human end.
That's right.
So
that's when I love that thought process, because I talk to people about, my audience has probably heard me say this several times, but I think of teams as you take them from chaos to community, right? So, and throughout a team's existence, you go into chaos periodically. It's not something that you're always in a state of community. But when you get to community, everybody is looking out for everybody else, right? You think about your neighborhood and, oh, I know this person might need groceries, or hey, I haven't seen so-and-so walk their dog in a while. And you notice things and you go check in on them because they're your community. Well, your team you should try to get your team into that state of community a majority of the time. Because to your point, the person that might have that relationship to be able to help or have the conversation in a way that the other person receives, like that, handing that paperwork over may not have worked if they didn't have that sense of community between the two of them. So I love that thought of empathy and approaching it that way, because I think that transcends everything you do as a team.
And I think the other part of it is that one of the barriers to supporting other people is that we sometimes look at other people and think, oh, they're so different from me.
Mm-hmm.
And if I try to support them, am I just going to get shut down because they're going to say you couldn't possibly understand? And what we talk about in the class is actually one of my favorite little parts of it is we talk about risk factors and warning signs and how people experiencing those different elements might feel. And we have a slide of words, like, so we encourage people, to give responses and just kind of shout them out in the class. And then I have a slide with those words up there. And I'm like, we could make this up because being human, no matter
Yeah.
how different someone is than me, I know that they're also going to have experienced heartbreak and loneliness and disappointment and then joy and excitement. And because of that, I know that I can connect with anyone on that level. So I
Right.
don't have to have had the exact same experience.
That's right. And I would encourage listeners, if you're like, hey, I work for such and such company, and you know what, this would be really great. Or I run this business and I have a retail outlet, and this might be really great for my team, doctors in their offices. Like this transcends just former military or first responders, or even like, just people in like maybe the hospital space that are dealing with a lot of these things on a more regular basis. What I love is that you pull people together into the training, and I would encourage folks to go to the website. We'll put it in the show notes as well, because you've got these great videos and like information about what it's like to go through one of these
Mhm.
60 to 90-minute classes. It doesn't appear to me to be a downer. It's saying, hey, we're empowering people, and people are
Right.
walking away in a better space because now they feel empowered.
Exactly. And it's the 60 to 90 minutes really makes it that people can do a lunch and learn.
Mhm.
It just makes it accessible to anyone. And like you said, really, whether it's a group of students, we've taught student groups at Johns Hopkins, at George Mason, Randolph-Macon, Emory University. And basically what we're doing is each of these different communities are going to see slightly different risk factors and warning signs. And so we bring those to the forefront. And then we also talk about what resources are available to some of these different communities. And the great thing is that we're not coming in and trying to, like, I'm not a clinician. We're not trying to treat anybody. We're not trying to sign up patients or get people to enroll in a program. We're trying to educate people and build community. So we love it when a company or a school or an organization says, well, we have, an employee assistance program, which
Mhm.
offers, free mental health for the first 5 sessions. We have, our employee resource groups where people can get together and meet and feel strengthened bonds within, our own organization. So we like to highlight what they're already doing. And I think one of the big things that does for leaders is it makes their staff feel cared about,
Mhm.
because they're like, oh, you guys actually took one of our lunch times to not only educate us, but then also inform us on what resources are out there and available. And so the the idea that leadership doesn't just come in and say, like, give lip service to caring about their staff, they're actually creating an opportunity for people to learn and then practice and then
Mm.
take advantage of the resources that are available.
Right. I love that idea of learn and practice, because it's, yes, I know the website that I can go to get all the information
Yep.
about, like you said, that here's, you get 5 sessions free, and if you come up with a different issue, there's another 5 issues free, right? Like, but it's that proactive mindset
Mhm.
is really, really cool, and you always need to bring a partner. I do like that you mentioned that too, because HR is a great partner for anyone to have in a corporate space. But you may be in a smaller company, and maybe there isn't as much a robust HR organization.
Mhm.
This is giving people the tools to be able to really help advocate for others and help others.
Yeah, absolutely. And the when you're talking about some of the smaller organizations, there are some wonderful, like small business, resources out there. And in our class, one of the things, like, and I tell people this in our class all the time, that we're not reinventing this information in some newfangled way. Everything that we provide is from leading mental health organizations. But what we did was we packaged it in a way that people could get this information during that 60 to 90 minutes, but it's also really interactive. So you learn something, you do an activity, you learn something, you do an activity. And it really, because you're working with the people that you came to the class with, and it keeps it really moving and pretty fast paced. And then at the end, a really important part of it is that if you are going to be someone who helps others and you do it for the long term, we have a section that focuses on resilience building and self-care, because you have to stay strong yourself if you're going to support other people.
I love that. In fact, I'd love to know, what are some tips or tricks on that resilience building and self-care that you help people with?
Well, there are tons of them. We do go over some in practice in the class. There's a couple that we like and we share. And part of it is, I can share one that I actually just used. I was addressing this group for the Virginia State Bar, and I don't know why in my head I thought it was going to be a smaller group, and I got there and there were like 90 people, and I was giving a presentation, not giving our class, but talking about the class. And it was an unusual situation for me. And I felt a little, I felt a little nervous, which normally I do so much public speaking that I don't really ever get nervous. So I was like, what is happening right now? But one of the things that we talk about is that there are times where we all start to feel like that anxiety feeling. And what is it that we can do for ourselves or someone else if they're in that situation where maybe you don't have an app? Because there's wonderful apps that you can use. We do an activity with stress balls. Some of the activities involve doing things with your body, like, getting up and going outside. Well, sometimes you can't. I mean, I was in this conference room, I was sitting there, that was it. And so one of the things that we talk about is, we call it like a challenge refocus, but it's basically refocusing your thoughts. And when your emotions are really high, it is hard for you to have logical decision making and think clearly. So when you're trying to rebalance that, one of the things that you can do is focus on basically anything that has to do with numbers. And so what I did was I sat in this conference room, and there were these huge light fixtures, and they were in circles, and they had lights going all the way around them. And so I counted the number of light fixtures on the ceiling, and I could feel myself calming down. I just went through the entire, because there were tons of them, and I was like, okay, how many light fixtures are in here? And if somebody, and you can do this with even young kids, if they're feeling anxious, how many people are wearing hats? How many people are wearing red shirts? And if you're really mathy, which I am not, you could start with 100 and count backward by fives, or by sevens, or by 13. And as your brain processes these numbers and things about math, your anxiety will drop and your logic gets raised. And so if you're in a situation, and this is one of the things that I did with as a volunteer working with the police and fire departments, was we were on scene, and people, obviously someone had passed away, so there was a really high stress, but we would have like our notebook and pen, and I would ask people questions like, oh, tell me, what are your kids' birthdays and what grades are they in? And could you verify your phone number and your address? Like, all these were math related things.
Right.
They were numbers. And I wasn't doing it in a way that seemed like I was, it was all just seemed like very normal and questions they had already been asked, but you could feel people starting to relax and settle a little bit. And there's so many of these types of things, but that's just one little tip that you can use. And in the class, we go over several of those things.
That's really, I've never heard that one. So that's really, really cool, and something that I think anybody can apply, because you don't have to do it out loud. You can
Right.
do it in the quiet of your mind, right?
Yep.
And so that's what makes it so accessible, which is fantastic.
Yep. And there's so many breathing, like square breathing. There's a lot of
Yeah.
breathing exercises. Most people have heard some sort of form of that, but that's why I tried to give a different one.
Yeah. I love that,
Yeah.
Deb. That's fantastic. Now, if people are really interested, they're like, you know what? I have this community, this team. I work for a company that we could really leverage this.
Mhm.
What's the best way for people to connect with you, Deb?
I would say go to our website, which is keys365.org. And there's a phone number on there. There's a contact form on there. All roads will lead to me through that. They're welcome to email me, message me through LinkedIn. They can email me, which is just deb.casello@keys365.org. But everything that we do is free. However, if an organization or company is willing to make a donation, it does enable us to continue our mission to support communities by offering the free suicide prevention classes. And we don't ask like military folks or students for money. I feel like they should keep it if they have it. And so we have some really generous corporate donors. And so we will go anywhere, and all people have to do is reach out, and we would love to connect.
That's fantastic. And I love, hey, go out there and donate too, right? A lot of companies have matching donations. So go out there and donate if there's something that really resonates with you. Now, I have to have my handy pen. I like to scribble lots of notes while we're talking, and I want to share some of the things that I wrote down as golden nuggets that I'm going to take with me. The first one is, that you have created this resource that's accessible to everyone to help educate and build a community. And through this training, it's proactive. It's allowing you to really learn and be able to have skills to be able to apply that empathy. You create opportunities for people to learn about resilience building and self-care. And I love your example because it's something I never heard of before. So when emotions are high, it's hard to refocus. So what you do is you do things with numbers, and that could be things like counting the light fixtures, doing basic math, things like that allow your anxiety to drop, which I love. Now I am an engineer by education, so that might be why it resonates so much with me, but I think that is really, really cool. That what Keys is doing is it's creating it's knowledge, empathy, yield strength. That's your acronym. And it's really amazing because you're infusing everything with empathy into each step that you teach.
Mhm.
And that prevention, there's the intervention, like true on crisis. And that's not what y'all are doing. You're doing the early stages, which allows you to create community so people can feel comfortable to either get help or say that they need help. If you're having conversations within a company and within your team, there might be a performance issue, but then there also might be a mental health issue, and that there's an importance to separate those two discussions. Maybe even taking the mental health discussion into a separate space, right? So it's not tied together. I love that because it is driving that mindfulness and that thoughtfulness and with connections.
Or having somebody else connect with the person if you feel like it would make a more impactful conversation.
Yeah, which is great because you want to build these teams of community. And then the last thing, which is really the first thing we talked about, is that there is a national suicide hotline, and that's 988.
Mhm.
So if you are in crisis now, or somebody who's in crisis right now, and you haven't gone through this Keys 365, please call that number if you or someone that that you care about is in need of help, because that's a great resource, and they will help connect you, locally to what you need. So, Deb, thanks again so much for your time today. This has been really educational, and I feel like I've now got a new set of skills that I can bring back to my team.
Well, I am so grateful for your time and having me on.
Thank you for tuning into Might in Motion. If you learned something about motivation, momentum, mindfulness, or might, please like, comment, and share. Thank you.